They say when you're a pastor, if you speak from your weakness, you'll never run out of material, which is what I'm going to do today. I've noticed this thing in my life. I keep looking to my left and my right to see what everyone else is doing, and comparing and measuring myself to determine how well I'm doing compared to them. The problem began when I was in high school. I wasn't big, so I hated football players. Wasn't smart, so I hated smart people. Wasn't cool, so I hated cool people. There was nothing wrong with linebackers, smart people, or cool people. It was just easier to hate them than to look at myself in the mirror and say, Joseph, you'll never be athletic, smart, or cool. Then in 11th grade, I discovered I could freestyle rap. You give me a topic, toss me a word, put me in a circle, and I can somehow rap forever. No pen, no prep. So during lunch, I gather a handful of other rappers and we would battle it out in front of the crowds of spectators. I was witty. And although I was normally quiet in these battles to see who was the best rapper, I'd often defeat my opponent with witty lyrics and a cool confidence. All of a sudden, I was somebody. And I thought I was cool. Give me Jay-Z next. Eminem, it's like taking candy from a baby. A really, really mad baby. So then, a friend tells me, you know what, you're so good, you should go to Chicago because there's this competition that happens and you might be able to win a record deal. Which I think, sure, I'm in. So I hop in my car and I drive to Chicago. And I get there and I'll never forget what it was like as I walked in the building. A sea of people, had to be over 500, 600 people. All other artists. And they said there was a room for just freestyling, which I said, that has to be the room I should go to. And I walked in. And it was a huge, huge group of people. And I listened to the two guys as they went at it. Lyric for lyric. Witty line for witty line. And I remember I looked at the person I came with and I said, wow, they're so, so good. And I chickened out. I told him, I said, we should just go back to the hotel and forget about it. And that's exactly what we did. Went back to the hotel and didn't even try. See, some of you are way more mature than that. But there's something in all of us, always looking to the left, always looking to the right, trying to figure out, how am I doing? Am I acceptable? How am I measuring up? Basically, we all want a bigger added to the adjectives that describe us. We want to be richer, skinnier, taller, prettier, happier, smarter, hipper, talenteder, right? I want more than you because I feel better about me. And then it's even worse because once you start dating, you want your boyfriend or girlfriend to have some right? I want him or her to be richer, skinnier, nicer, handsomer, and all of that. And then there's the other side of it. Some of us really do have more than others. They're a little heavier, a little slower, a little poorer, a little shorter, nerdier. And this makes us feel superior. And we know we shouldn't feel like that. But it feels good for a second. We know it's not a good habit, but we can't seem to help ourselves. Then there's another group of us. Isn't enough. I don't want to be richer. I want to be the richest. I want to be the smartest. I want to be the happiest. I want to be the retweetedest. I want to be in a category all by myself so when people look at me, they are like, whoa. Or maybe you think, it's not his fault he's faster than me. She's prettier than me. You look in the mirror and you hate you. You'll never be as blank as them. You may never be that happy, have that much attention, be that athletic, look like that, drive that car, or be able to get into that school. And here's the bottom line. If you don't get anything else out of this series, get this. There's no win in comparison. There's no finish line. There's no final sense of satisfaction. There's no win. If you're better than people, that doesn't help you. If you're not measuring up to people, that doesn't help you. Comparison is a trap. It keeps you captive to some imaginary standard of good enough, and that you'll never quite reach. It sets you up to never enjoy your successes, to be miserable with your failures. So, what do we do about this part of us? Well, here's the amazing thing. Scripture actually has something to say about this. In fact, even if you aren't sure about this whole Jesus thing, that's okay. You don't have to be a Christian to get something out of what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to look briefly at a couple of things said by a king named Solomon. Now, the Bible calls him the wisest man who ever lived. Solomon's not somebody you want to compare yourself with. He'll win every single time. He did more than you'll ever do. His wives were prettier than your girlfriend will ever be. So whatever you think you're going to accomplish, you're not going to keep up with Solomon. He was the wealthiest person in the world. Kings and queens traveled to sit at his feet and ask for wisdom. He was the man. Solomon looks at the world and addresses our tendency to compare ourselves to each other. In Ecclesiastes 4, he says, "And I saw that all toil and all achievement springs from one person's envy of another." Basically, he's saying, I've been watching people, and for the most part, the thing that drives their behavior is competition. They're looking over their left shoulder or their right shoulder, looking at what everybody else is doing, where they're shopping, what they're driving, where they're living. And their toil, their work, is driven by what they see people doing around them. Now that was 3,000 years ago. This has been going on a long time. Solomon saw people determining where they were based on where everybody else was. And he says, I looked around and it looked like everyone was determining whether they're okay based on what everyone else is doing. It's human nature. And this is a summary of that whole idea. He says, this too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Meaningless. Can you imagine someone chasing after the wind, running around in the yard trying to catch it? Not only would they look ridiculous, they'd never be able to catch it. Comparison is like that. There's never a sense of satisfaction. Solomon goes on. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. In other words, I'm not telling you not to be ambitious. I'm Solomon. Have you seen my temple? Have you seen my gardens? I have 300 plus wives and 600 plus concubines. I'm a busy guy. I have a lot going on, and I have more gold than Fort Knox. So I'm not saying you should just sit around and do nothing and not be the best you can become. No, only a fool would fold their hands and do nothing. All right, Solomon, you got me. So what are you trying to tell me? Well, he says, better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. See, here's what he's saying. The richest guy in his generation. It's better to have one open hand. If your hand is open, God can put in or take out whatever he chooses. Having only one hand to clutch what you can is better than having two fists clenched hanging on to everything you can get. Why? Because with two fists clenched, there will never be peace. After you've tightened your fingers around every single thing that you can get, there's always something you can't get. And it will be like you're chasing the wind. Solomon goes on. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. This is so great. It's like saying, welcome to my message today. We're going to talk about something meaningless, some meaningless things. And yet, somehow Solomon makes meaningless things interesting. He goes on. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother, which meant in the culture he had nobody to leave stuff to. You couldn't leave stuff to women 3,000 years ago. So he says there's a man who had no one to leave anything to, and yet there was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. So he says there are people who work, and they're never content, and they always want more to do. There's always another goal, always something else to achieve. And then Solomon says this guy asks a question. For whom am I toiling? In other words, why am I doing all this? Why do I live like this? Why am I constantly looking to my left or to my right, wondering, am I okay? Am I okay? For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? Why is it that I can't stop and enjoy what I've spent my entire life and leveraged everything in order to get? Why is it that I have to keep churning it out, and to get all this stuff, and I'm not really even enjoying it? What am I really doing this for, and what's driving me? So Solomon says, unless you do something about it, it's human nature to take your cue from the person on the left and the person on the right, and to constantly be comparing and competing. And then he summarizes it this way: this too is meaningless. I love this. It's a miserable business. As long as you're trying to have two handfuls and wish you had a third, it doesn't matter what's in your hands. It doesn't matter what you accomplish. It doesn't matter what you have, how cute your girlfriend is, how many trophies you have, what your GPA is. As long as your mindset is like this, it's a miserable business, and you'll never be able to enjoy your life. Bottom line, there's no win in comparison. What if we learn to live like this? What if we learn to catch ourselves when we started to compare ourselves to others, to chase what they have? There's something in all of us looking for something to tell us, you're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're right where you need to be. You're good enough. So the question I want to leave you with is this: where are you looking? Is it your dad? Is it your family, friends, how you look, how good you are at something? What or who you are looking to feel like you're okay? Solomon says, if you look to your left or look to your right, if you're not careful, you're going to be clenching your hands, grabbing onto things, but you'll never feel like you're okay. Are you exhausted from trying to keep up with whoever? Is there something in you that's just kind of tired of just trying to keep up? Are you allowing what others have to keep you from enjoying what God has allowed you to own? Are you allowing what you don't have to keep you from enjoying what you do have? Who would you secretly enjoy seeing fail? Are you clenching your hands? Do you feel like you're holding on to an imaginary better than others title that makes you feel like you measure up? Do you know how it feels to be in the miserable business of feeling like you always need to be more like him or more like her? Remember, there's no win in comparison. There's no benefit. There's nothing good about it. So together, let's knock it off. Let's fight the urge to look to our left and our right to find out if we're okay. Let's stop clenching our fists around the things that make us feel like we're better. In fact, let's choose to let go of those things altogether. As you leave today, think about the areas where you compare yourself to others. How would it feel to let that comparison go? How much less would you worry? How much less exhausted would you be?